Mitrofan Viktorovich Dovnar-Zapol'skiy was a historian, ethnographer, and diplomat of Belarusian origin. He hailed from the family of landless smaller nobility and was the son of Collegiate Secretary. He was the author of more than 150 works on the history of Kievan Rus, Muscovy, 19th-century Russia, Lithuania and Belarus, on the social-political movement, peasants' question and the ethnography of Belarus. Notably, the majority of his works were of a scientific-analytical nature. He extensively sourced his works on the materials from more than 20 archives in Moscow, St. Petersburg, Kiev, Vilna, Warsaw, Krakow, Lviv, Kostroma, Yaroslavl, Novgorod, Nyasvyj, etc. Many of his works remained unpublished. He was awarded the Order of St. Vladimir 4th grade for his scientific work. Biography. An alumnus of the Historical Philological Faculty of Kiev University, he wrote a magister dissertation on history in fall 1901 and a doctoral dissertation on history in 1906. He became professor at Moscow University, and professor of Russian history at Kiev University in 1902. He was the organizer and director of the higher commercial courses, one of the organizers and the first head of the southwestern branch of the Russian Exports Chamber, and head of several popular scientific circles and societies in Kiev. After a conflict with students of Kiev Commercial Institute and the case of Stashevsky, Dovnar-Zapol'skiy resigned from almost all professorial work. He then became professor at the Kharkiv Institute of People's Economy in December 1919 and at Kharkiv University in 1920, remaining there until 1921. He was also pro-rector of Azerbaijan University and professor of the Baku Polytechnical Institute from 1922 to 1925. Following that, he was professor of Belarusian history at the Belarusian State University from October 1925 to fall 1926, creating the Archaeographical Commission of Inbalkult together with Dovgyalo in 1925. After the forced move to Moscow in the fall of 1926, he frequently had to seek occupation outside the field of science. He was professor at Tymyazov Academy in the 1930s. In the 1920s and 1930s, he occupied several management positions in the system of management of the economy in Soviet Ukraine, Azerbaijan, Belarus and Russia. In politics, he participated in then illegal movements of the 1880s and was temporarily banned to settle in Kiev. Later, he sympathized with left movements. Dovnar-Zapol'skiy actively supported the Belarusian People's Republic, headed the Belarusian Chamber of Commerce in Kiev in 1918, and prepared the project of the creation of the Belarusian University in Minsk at the end of March 1918. From May to October 1918, he participated in the work of the BPR's diplomatic mission in Kiev, which sought the recognition of the BPR from representatives of Soviet Russia, Ukraine, Don, Germany and Austro-Hungary. At the request of the BPR's authorities, he prepared the notable informational memorandum, published in Grodno and Vilna in 1919 in Belarusian, Russian, Polish, German and French languages, also translated to English by P. Clark. This memorandum contained the historical ground for the necessity of creation of independent Belarusian state and was presented at the Versailles Conference by the BPR's delegation, albeit without positive outcome. His two sons perished in the ranks of Red Army during the Russian Civil War. His printed but unpublished book, History of Belarus, caused outrage among the Belarusian political authorities, was denounced as a catechism of Belarusian national democratism, and was subsequently banned. The manuscript was confiscated. Consequently, Dovnar-Zapol'skiy was forced to move to Moscow, effectively exiled, and never after returned returned to Belarus. From 1930 to 1934, he was heavily criticized for the alleged neo-narodnichestvo, attributed the authorship of the ideological basis of national democratism, equated to the agents of fascism by Cad. V.K. Sherbakov, politically denounced together with his scientific school by his former pupil Professor A.P. Oglobin. In science, pupil of Professors Golubovsky, Ikonikov, and especially V.B. Antonovich, he sought to emulate the combination of scientific and educational activities as manifested by P. Shafarik, V. Karadzic, and N.I. Kostomarov. He denounced the view of Belarusians as being devoid of nationality, and was a decided promoter and supporter of Belarusian national revival in the beginning of the 20th century. Dovnar-Zapol'skiy greeted the emergence of the strictly objective and scientific trend in Belarusian historical and ethnographical research. He showed general sympathy with Marxist theory but wasn't taught by it. Historical concepts. Dovnar-Zapol'skiy promoted the concept of primacy of the history of people over the history of states and considered ethnography and economics to be highly important, if not chief factors, in studying the history of society. As part of his research into Belarusian history, he postulated the existence of Belarusian nationality with its own history, distinct ethnographical features, rich folk culture, with Belarusian language being heir of the speech of the Krivichi and the Dragovich. He supported colonizational theory of emergence of state in Belarus, and considered Krivichi and Dragovich largely to be isolated from ancient Rus state and therefore evolving differently. Dovnar-Zapol'skiy also postulated the absence of ethnographical unity in ancient Rus state, with external political and military affairs being the only binding factors in it. He viewed the creation of Great Duchy of Lithuania and Rus in the 13th century as partially peacefully created and mutually beneficial union between the princes of weakened Rus and militant Lithuanian princes. He also considered both the Lublin Union and Church Union to have been negative factors in Belarusian history, claiming they promote religious intolerance. He also disapproved of the incorporation of Belarusian land into Russia after the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth partitions. Generally, he considered two evils to have influenced Belarusian history negatively: the Polish Szlachta aristocratical republic and the Russian boyar oligarchy. He disapproved of both, as these excluded demos, being therefore perilous to the Belarusian people who are highly democratic in their historical and folk traditions. Later in the 1920s, the historian further emphasized the economical factor in history and the significance of class struggle in the history of the Great Duchy, viewed by others. His person and works attracted all sorts of polarized opinions. Up to the 1930s, he was regarded generally positively by M.K. Lyubovsky, V.I. Pikato, F.F. Turek, D.I. Dovguelu and others. Beginning in the 1930s, he fell under stigmatizing critique and denunciation as a scientist by S.R. Wolfson, V. M. Pitsev, V. K. Sherbakov and others. In the 1940s, 1970s, comparatively safe-to-touch parts of his works were being explored and built upon by V.K. Bandarchik, M.F. Pilipyenko, I.U. Chakvin, M.M. Ulashkik, L.V. Alexei I.U. Historical part of his work remained visible as scarce references up to the mid-1980s. Attempts at estimating him as a historian were made in monographies of U.M. Miknyach Z. U. Kapitsky, V. U. Chapko. In the 1990s, there appeared works researching the generalized scientific position of Dovnar-Zapol'skiy, the evolution of historical concept. John Leslie Howard Keep and Alter L. Litvin refer to both Dovnar-Zapol'skiy and Picchietta as moderate nationalists. Scientific works: History, Economy and Statistics of Belarus. Sketch of History of lands of Krivichi and Dragovichi up to the end of 12th century. Kiev, 1891. West Russian rural commune in 16th century. St. Petersburg, 1897. State economy of Great Duchy of Lithuania under Jagiellons. Magister dissertation. Kiev, 1901. Sketches on organization of West Russian peasantry in 16th century. Doctor dissertation. Kiev, 1906. History of Russian people's economy. Kiev, 1911. History of Belarus. Preliminary completion in 1919. Expanded and printed in 1925. Banned. Republished from incomplete manuscript in 1994 and 2005. Sketch on social-economical structure of Belarus in 1618. Cent. Minsk, 1925. People's economy of Belarus in 1861 to 1914. Minsk, 1926. USSR by region. Western region, Moscow, Leningrad, 1928. Ethnography and Folklore of Belarus. Belarusian Marriage and Marriage Songs. Kiev, 1888. Belarusian Marriage in Cultural Religious Survivals. Kiev, 1893. Belarusian Poesy. Collection of ethnographical materials by M. V. Dovnar-Zapol'skiy. Songs of Pinchuki. Kiev, 1895. Research and Articles. Collection in 2-volume. Kiev, 1909. Political History of Rus and Russia. Political Setup of Ancient Rus. Moscow, 1906. Political Ideals of M. Speransky. Moscow, 1906. Emerging of Ministries in Russia. Moscow, 1906. From History of Social Movements in Russia. Articles. Kiev, 1905. Works on Decembrist Movement. Secret Society of Decembrists. Moscow, 1906. Memoirs of Decembrists. Kiev, 1906. Ideals of Decembrists. Moscow, 1907. Documental works. Documents of Moscow Archive of Ministry of Justice. Moscow, 1897. Bakulub Charter, 1897. Acts of Lithuanian-Russian State. Issue 1, 1390-1529. Moscow, 1898. Lithuanian Memorabilia to Tatar Hordes. Simferopol, 1898. Collection of materials on the history of people of Volyn Voivodeship in 1718. Cent. 1914.